Okay, now we're live. We are live on Facebook. Okay, Facebook people, be patient. We're going to also set up a Zoom. You shouldn't. You're connecting with the Zoom in Chassidus at K, huh? There's a Zoom link in Chassidus at K that you shouldn't need a password for.
Where's the link that I can post it to the comments?
It's in Chassidus at K, in the WhatsApp.
Okay, it's fine actually. The people are watching here.
Hold on, people. Just setting up. I want to get into the Zoom. So tonight we're doing both Facebook Live and Zoom. This is the first. Give the Zoom people an opportunity to pipe up so we can hear them.
Okay, hang on a second. Let's hope this works. The microphone.
A minute later, you saw I got a gem.
Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Oh, yeah, I'm on beyond. Just exhausted. Today was crazy.
Okay, so far I'm the only person in the Zoom.
What?
I'm the only person in the Zoom, so I'm going to. What can I do here?
It's very empty.
Okay, we have one other person in
What
the
should we
Zoom.
do about the fact that it's so empty? That like no one's here.
They're busy. They're busy. You mean here in present or
Mm-hmm.
in the room?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
By the way, just so you know, it's I have a 9-year-old, so also people could show up at any time, but just mitzad yichud.
Okay, I'm first in the Zoom. Can you hear me in the Zoom? Okay. So I'm on earphones. I'm going to leave
People can hear
myself
you?
on earphones. You can hear me. And what I'll do is I'll just repeat any questions or comments that you have in the mic on the table, which is going to the Facebook people. And we have a few people on Facebook already.
Okay, let's go live.
3,
Are you going live, Esther?
Yeah, I think we're gonna be live.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's just start.
Which side you sitting on?
On the left side, I think.
The left side?
Please, yeah. Trying to laugh?
Yeah?
Can you give me a pencil, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Is that Maya? Just say hi to Maya.
Oh, Maya. Hi.
Oh, hi, Ellie.
Very nice. I haven't seen Maya in a long time.
Okay, so we're live.
We are live.
Okay, fantastic. Are we live on this one?
Ellie, who?
Okay, great. Trying to live, do you want to share it?
Okay, those of you in Facebook land, I hope you have either the book, Torah Or, in front of you,
You can share. Everybody?
or have access to Chassidus at K, where the text is. Let me just move this a little.
We're going back to Bereshis.
Okay, huh?
We're in Bereshis.
We are in the third installment of a series on the creation. The first two, we talked about how God does the creation. No, we talked about what the creation is, how He does it, and this is why He does it. And, okay. Let me just see here. Okay, so everybody knows that it rose up in God's will. I mean, not everybody knows, but a lot of people know. And if you don't know, we're telling you now. That it rose up in God's will to create. And the level of will in Kabbalah and Chassidus is equated with the Kesser, the crown. And the crown has two levels. The lower level is like the drive a person has to do something. The upper level is the source of that. So there's a source of the drive to do something, and there's the actual drive to do something. So it rose up in God's innermost will. Ola b'ratzoynoi livroi is the expression in Chassidus. It rose up in his will to create. And you could ask why, but there won't be any answer to why. Because so it rose up in his will. So when it rose up in his will to create, just like us, and we always do this because the Torah has been thankfully designed in such a way that God says explicitly that He's created us in our image. So the way we operate is the way He operates. So when something rises up in our will to do a project, to create a work of art, we then think about, well, how are we going to do it? And in particularly, let's take the work of art. What materials are we going to use? Is this going to be a watercolor? Is this going to be a pen and ink? What is it? So God decided that He would bring forth 10 tools, which are called the 10 spheros. So that's how He did it, or how He does it. What we're going to explore tonight is why He does it. And most people probably are aware of the fact that His main kavanah, His main intention in creating the worlds was to create man, a human being. Because man is the only entity in creation, the human, in whose image God is created. So tonight we're going to understand a little bit, or a lot, about how God creates man. So here we are. We're in the text now. I should say that, two things. Reminder that this series of classes in general is dedicated to the elevation of the neshama of Shlomo ben Moshe. And tonight particularly, it's also dedicated to the refuah shlema of Yitzchak ben Devorah and Chana Edel bas Miriam. And as I always say, in the future, if anyone wants to dedicate a shir, this doesn't cost. Most dedications cost money. This one doesn't. You can just text me, and I'll be happy to mention those who need refuah shlema, or for any reason you want to dedicate this learning. Okay, we're on page 6 on Bereshis in the Sefer Torah Or, which is the first volume of 2 volumes, Torah Or and the Kuti Torah, and the first one deals, as you might think, with the beginning, Bereshis. We're going to understand the reason why, when Hashem created Adam, the human, He created him differently from every other thing in creation. When He created the body of Adam, how He created it differently, Mishar Kol HaNivroim, from all the other creatures. For instance, if we take the vegetative kingdom, the Achai and the animal kingdom, Shekulam Nivra Begufam Adidei Maimer Hashem. Every one of them was created, their body was created through God's speech. He spoke. When He said Ve'hi Rakia, that's the second utterance, the Rakia came into existence. And it says V'yayim Gimel, for instance, the third day, Titshe Ha'aretz Desha, the earth should spring forth vegetation, Esim Mazriya, a vegetative growth which will come from the seed. Eitz Eisepri, the tree from which will come the fruit. He spoke those things into existence in one utterance. V'yechen, He spoke, and it was. V'chein v'yem chamishi, on the 5th day, Shiyortzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya, the waters swarmed with the swarms of living things in the waters. V'chein b'kulam, and likewise with all of them. Hadisha oretz hayatzia es hasavomim, the land, the earth gave forth vegetation. V'es ha'lonis, and trees. Kol echad v'yachad kameshu achacha. Each one developed the way it was going to be afterwards, forever. The trees, the grasses, from the first utterance until now and until eternity. So everything was created. If it was a plant, the spiritual energy to give forth the plant, to make it grow, was created concurrently with the actual thing itself. Similarly, animals. They came out of the earth also, as they are living. They were alive in the instant that they were created. As Hadaig, as Ari, the bear, and the lion, etc. The Gam HaMayim, and also the water itself. Shurotsu Ken Sheretz Nefesh Chai. The water existed in the utterance of when he created the water, all just as it is now, and also the dagim and the fish, Gam Ken Kamei Shehem. Just as the way they are. So the point being, everything was created except man, with a body and a soul together. Simple?
Okay.
Simple.
Yeah.
And that soul that's in the animal kingdom, for instance, is the nefesh hachiyunis, the enlivening soul. And that enlivening soul is in the animal, or gives life to the plant, and it's one with this materiality, the spirituality and the materiality were joined immediately. Through the saying, let the earth bring forth whatever it brought forth. And the water, as you said it, the water is instantly swarmed with living things. And this is expressed in the utterance, the expression, he commanded and it was created. Just as they are now, as an exception of our sages, the sages said in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, everything, the way it is standing now, is the way it stood then.
Where are you? Sorry.
Where am I now?
My son,
Kamoisen
Nivro. Okay,
Nivro.
got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we don't have an evolutionary theory here of lower things evolving into upper things. We have a creationist proclamation. I hardly want to call it a theory, because it's not a theory, it's a revelation. It's a revelation that the Torah gives us that everything was created as it was. Except for us.
Humans.
Except for us. Right? Mashiach came when it comes to the creating of the human. First he made the body. Offer beli shum nefesh chiyunis b'soife. Dirt. He sketched out the dirt, the shape of an Adam in the ground, without any enlivening soul within it. As is written in Scripture, in Bereshis. God, Elohim, created man from dust from the earth, and as our sages say, Chevra Ahavas. In the beginning, at the time of the creation, the first thing he did was gather up the dust. To gather up the dust. This is spoken about at length, actually, in the Gemara Sanhedrin, and one interesting thing it says there. He gathered the dust from different places of the earth. He took the dust of his body from Babylon. He took the dust for his head from Eretz Yisroel, and all of his limbs he took from all the other places on the planet.
Very interesting. What's the significance in that?
I can only having learned the Gemara and not the explanation, it just makes sense to me.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Like maybe Hashem got the dust from every single continent.
He did take the dust.
Why do you think?
Why did he take both?
Yeah. Why do you think he took
think
it from
it will
all
be.
different continents?
It's the reason I can say what I'm about to say, but it's just me saying it, is from what comes later in the Mimer. Bubble is the source of confusion, right? The word bubble. And that's the dirt. The dirt just scatters oil everywhere. So Seichel, on the other hand, is the source of integration, which is the mind. And Eretz Yisroel is where God integrates, he reveals his inner essence in the land of Israel, and from there it scatters out. So, but I think it's a good explanation. You'll have to decide yourself in the context of what we're going to be learning.
Can we just hear Shmuel Chaim, what he had to say? Why do you think
Sure.
Hashem did that?
The reason why I think Hashem took dust from every single continent it's because that maybe it's basically like maybe like the whole world is just from one man. Every single continent, he takes dust from every continent, and it forms one man. That's basically like the whole world.
Exactly.
Right, and you know what it says? B'shvira nivra ha'olam. The entire world was created for one man, right? Each person needs to feel that way. That Hashem created the world for him. But then he also created man from the whole
Why
world.
not her?
So in case you guys out there didn't
That's
hear
very,
it,
very good answer, Shmokani.
why he took dust from all over the earth? Because the earth is a singular thing called earth, but it's composed of all different parts. So likewise humanity. There's all different kinds of people, all diverse people, but we're all one humanity. Maybe what?
Why are there 7 continents? Or is there a mystical reason for?
I mean, look, we can. I've never learned anything. We can make these up because there are 7 midos, right? Yeah, 7 midos.
That's the reason.
And by the way, that's a truth. This I did learn in my peregrinations through Kabbalah and Chassidus, that it's a cloud. That any number in Torah,
Yosef just buzzed them in.
any single number in Torah, is related to every other number in Torah. So every time you find a 7, it's definitely related to the 7 midos, 7 days of the week, 7 days. But deeper than that, I cannot go. So he gathered dust from all the, so man, different from all the other creatures, created very, very differently. He's not alive. He's not alive when he's first created. He's just a lump of dirt. Similar to what the Maharal Nefrad did when he created the golem,
Yes.
right? He took, right?
Collected
How did he create the golem?
water.
Huh?
He collected water,
He took water,
thunder,
earth,
then I think air,
yep,
and then he formed it into a dot.
into a dot.
Yes, into a person.
Right. And it's very interesting. Very what he's saying is that, and it's the fact that the golem took various different elements, and then he, of course, articulated some Kabbalistic, either articulated in speech or in his thought, the Kabbalistic connections which would bring them all together, and that made a living thing, a living man. So, and that's what God did. He took from the dirt, and the line begins, he took earth from the dirt. The commandment is Zal, as our sages said, and this we're just repeating here. Shareshena Sova Afra, at the first hour of the man's creation, what did he do? He gathered dust. He gathered the dust. And so at the beginning, this man was a goylem. He was just a galme, a lump of dirt.
But wait, I have a question.
Question. Hold on. Let's see if we can get this question audible to everybody. Go ahead.
So, if the Ma'ara applied to dirt, water, thunder, and air to make a person, how come Hashem made a person only out of dirt?
No, we're only on the first stage. It takes a lot of things to make an Adam, and we're on the first stage. The first thing he did was the dirt. He shaped him up in dirt. But as we go further, we'll find out what else he added. But the point that we're making so far in the Mimer, for those of you who came late, is that every other single thing in the creation was created as it was, as it will be, and as it goes on forever. The plants were created living. The animals were created living. Man was created not living. Number one, he was created in stages. First the dirt, and then something else.
And then after that, there probably was another
Right.
stage, and
Yeah,
then a few more stages
We'll
probably,
see.
and then came.
And then finally he gets up and he speaks. So we have this actually in Tillim. The line says, Galme ra'u einecha. You saw that you speak about God. David HaMelech is speaking to God. You saw, your eyes saw my lump of clay, basically. That I was just my unshaped form. Ad, until, she'achachach. Jonathan, you want a mimer?
Thank you. You also pass the potato chips, by the way.
Okay, the line, we're in the second column on the page. And the line begins, afterwards, now we're going to add something. This is the most important thing that gets added. Really, there are going to be many stages, but there are two main stages. Number one, the dirt formed into the shape. And then, the Yipach the Apo Nishmas Chaim. He blows a living soul into the person. The shape of man did not get up from the earth the way it does now. Now the man has a living soul and he has a speaking soul. That didn't happen immediately. Not until Shalokach Offer, until he took the dirt, the Guf, and made from that dirt a body. The Achachach, and afterwards, Nopach Neshama Ba'apa, blew a soul into him. Now, as we're going to now elaborate at length, these are two things which are worlds apart. The godly soul and a lump of dirt. Worlds apart. So, this is the unique quality of man, and you have to ask your question, how do these two things get together? Bezehu bechinas shiftless. Now, one important thing, yeah?
I have a question, but not about what we're...
Not about what we're learning, can we...
But it's also kind of connected.
Should I take it,
Yes,
Mother?
take the question.
Take the question, okay? Here's a question, not exactly about
From our
what we're
scholar
learning.
in residence.
Okay, so how do we know that everything in Jewish history happened? With Adam
How do we
and
know?
Avram and
Yeah, all of it.
Moshe
How do we
and
know?
all the stuff like that. How do we know that
You
it's
that's the
real?
question you're asking?
That's the question.
The reason we know that it happened is because the Torah said so. Now you could ask, how do we know that the Torah is not a fake story? Right?
Yeah. Like how do we know that it's
Okay,
not made up?
that takes a longer time to come to understand, and I'll say it very briefly. If you give yourself the time to learn the Torah, and the way the Torah really is very, learn it deeply and well, you yourself, and this is kind of a bracha and a promise, you will come to know very clearly that it comes from God, because it explains everything that ever was, is, and will be, and particularly those things which other books and other ways of study have never yet explained. But you can only see that over time, and then you'll come to know.
We also know that a couple million people witnessed the Torah being given on Har Sinai.
Yeah, but his question goes, how do you know that's true? That could be a book. We can make a novel about that.
Like maybe just
I mean,
one-
everything in this Torah you could say, that's an interesting story,
Mm-hmm.
and there's lots of it. His question is
Right.
a deep question. How do you know that that's emes?
The Bible codes. Can we talk about the Bible codes?
Well, you'll learn it, and as you learn it, God willing, you and everybody here, and all me too, will come to more and more believe it, because it just covers everything, and you'll say, how could that have been known? I mean,
But once you learn all the safers and the full Torah and stuff like that, you'll come to the part where you actually realize how everything that you've been reading is true and not false.
absolutely. It should be that way.
We say thank you.
Now.
Rabbi Keenan.
That was great.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you guys out there heard this. Right?
Thank you for that piece of information.
Okay, good. Nothing like having a really, really straightforward question. Exactly.
7-year-old versus 70-year-old. Who wins?
All right. So,
That was a nachas moment.
where we are in our story, we have man unique from other creatures, created from the deepest of the deep and the lowest of the low, from the godly soul to the piece of dirt. Now, that he's created from a piece of dirt gives rise to a quality in us humans that's unique amongst all the species. The Zeobakin is shiftless. This is the level that he's created from dirt, gives us humans the possibility to do the avoider, which we call shiftless. Hachnoah v'shiftless. Humility, loweredness, and bittul. That's where we get it. Just like the earth is bittul, right? Everything pours into the earth absorbs everything, and because of that it's able to give out plants, etc. So this is a topic, of course, we've covered in many different aspects. Bittul. Now what we're saying is, where does the bittul come from? Bittul comes from because a fundament of our humanness is the dirt. So therefore, we have, as part of our quality of being, a capability, and because we have the capability, we have a responsibility to bring forth that shiftless, that lowness, that openness, in order to deal with the natural arrogance that comes from the animal soul. Shiftless. So this is the level of shiftless lagabi odom, the level of loweredness or bittul in terms of what a person can have. Because the body of a human is lower than the body of an animal. Because it comes from the inanimate. The animal never came from the inanimate. Again, the animals did not evolve out of the dirt. Anyway, we can silence that, or is it important?
I just have to remember to.
All right, don't make it a project. Okay.
Remember how to do it. I can do it. I know.
Okay, guys out there, here we go. Nice group in Facebook land. Please, Facebook, I can't hear you, but please,
There, I lowered it.
raise a question or comment if you have one.
Hi. Come on in. Roxanne just-
Shiftless? Yeah. Yeah, okay. The animals are not created from doimim. We have 4 levels, right? Doimim, semer, chaim, and daba. Inanimate, animate, meaning plant life. They have animation, they grow. And then the animal, and then the human. The animals and the plants are not created from doimim. They're not created from the dirt. They're created by the speech of Hashem, their body and soul together. That's what we learned in the first section of this. The human is unique in that he's a composite of 2 extremes, dirt and the nefesh elokis. And because he's actually created from the dirt, I mean, firstly, the other thing I said about the other creatures is that the Torah, the Torah is telling us that there's no such thing as evolution of animation out of dirt. In other words, animated things, plants, don't evolve out of dirt. They were created animated as animated creatures. And neither does man evolve out of dirt. Man is a juxtaposition of 2 extremes, dirt and godly soul, or nefesh medaberes, we'll call it the speaking soul. And as a result of that, man is the only creature that can utilize his dirtness. What's his dirtness? His shiftless. As it says, that let me be like the dust that everyone tramples upon. Let me be open and not arrogant, and be flat, effaced. These are all the words that I come to equate with shiftless and bittul. And because of that, I can be open to things. A human being can be open to things and experiences that nothing else can have, because of the fact that he's created from that level which is the lowest, the most flat, the most effaced. Does that help? Okay. So the question is this the origin of the idea that it's only from the darkness that we can bring the greatest light? I'm repeating because you guys in Facebook land don't hear these questions. I'm plugged in here. Yes, the answer is yes. That the power we have to illuminate the darkness is because we are rooted in the darkness, right? But of course, that's only one half of the story. If we only had that, God forbid, we would be sunk in the darkness. But the ability that we have through the union of this tremendously incompatible, it would seem, juxtaposition of nefesh elokis and nefesh Ahavas allows us to bring the light from the darkness. And this will be talked about as we go further. So, number 1, man is not like any other creature. All other creatures are created, boom, the plants are alive, the fish are alive, the waters are moving, the lion and the tiger, there they are, he spoke and they come into existence, as we learn in Tanya, through various combination of letters. But the human is created in two stages, well, two radical stages. First stage, he's sketched out in the dirt, and then second stage, the Nefesh Elokis is blown into him. And the dirt part, it gives him the ability for Bechina shiftless, that he can be in a state of lowliness and hold himself low, period. Ach lahaven zeh, to understand this, Alma Ulama Niyaisa came, why he came into being or comes into being this way. Why? So now we'll get to a little bit toward the question of what's the purpose? What's the purpose of such an odd juxtaposition? Okay, so first let's back off a little. Let's understand that there are four general levels of created matter. Daimim, dirt, Tzemeach, vegetation, Chai, animal, Umedaber, the human, who's associated with speech. And we'll discuss that if it needs to be discussed a little bit later in the morning. And these four levels, inanimate, animate, plant, and moving, animal, and speaking, Hen Keneged Dalet Oisis L'Shem Havaya. They stand for the four letters of Havaya. A question at the table was asked about the seven continents and the seven and what he related to. So here's an example where the Torah tells us very explicitly, we can compare the four levels of being, Daimim, Tzemeach, Chai, Medaber, to the four letters of Hashem's name, which is an example of a general principle that wherever you find any number, all other occurrences of that number are somehow related. And we're going to explain the relationship between the four levels of matter, of substance on this planet, to the Shem Havaya. We have a questioning face at the question at the table.
I mean, other than the fact that there are four letters.
Right, other than the fact, right, of course.
Okay.
We have to explain it. What's the connection?
Shem Havaya, there's really only three letters.
It's four occurrences.
It's still two.
And we know from other places that the two hays are very different. Okay.
Are they?
But, yeah, absolutely.
How are they different? They're spelled. They look differently. You're saying?
No, not very different in their meaning.
Right.
Okay. And we'll talk about
We have different akudas also.
it. Nakudas we're not talking about yet, just letters. Nakudas also create different meanings in letters. Here it's the position. The position creates different meaning in the letter hey. Okay, so how do they map? How do the four elements or parts of creation, dirt, plant, animal, and human, how do they map to the Shem Havaya? A daimim ukame offer. Daimim is the dirt, which is like the dust. Ve'avanim, umetoches, and stones and metal. She'en le gidol b'someach, and they don't grow. They have no vegetative power, like the trees and the grasses, Elonis ve'asovim, the balechayim, and the animals. Yesh lehem, who do have kol zeh, they have all this. The animals have these other faculties. The nation calls it, in addition to that, so the main point about dirt is it doesn't have the ability to grow. They're going to say it, right? The earth has certain qualities of it, like nutrients and things, which are important for the next level up. But the next level up has invested in it a spirit of growth. That's the plant. So it can grow. And it has in it certain things which are necessary for the next level to feed on, right? But the next level to which it feeds on, which is the animal, was also created, living, right? So, and the medaber, the speaker, is the fourth level. So the two in between, the plants and the animals, they were created. So the plants and the animals are connected with the vav and the hay. The hay and the vav, the upper hay and the vav. We'll explain this later of the Shem Havaya. So you have the Yud on top, that's the Nefesh Elokis. Yud, the ayin, the nothing, the point from which everything emerges. And that specifically is blown into the dirt. The vision of the drawing out of the man in the dirt. And the others, as we said before, have the connection of spiritual and physical at the same time. And who's going to explain this at length?
So the Hey and the Vav are Daimim and Sameach.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not Daimim and Sameach. Animal and Sameach. The
Animal
first
what?
Hey and the Vav. The Hey is the animal. The Vav is the Sameach. And then the last Hey is the dirt. Mother
Oh,
Earth.
we're working our way down.
Mother Earth.
Oh.
Mother Earth. No, the Yud is man. Adam ala Elyon, the word Adam. Very interesting little drush from Chassidus. The word Adam, human, is the same root word as Adama, comparable. So man, the Medaber, is the Yud. He's comparable to the Most High. And his being is a result of that Most High being unified, juxtaposed is the word I used earlier, with the lowest of the low, which is Mother Earth, Dinah. So in between, you have the first Hay, which is closer to the Creator. It has more capabilities. That's the animal, and then the Vav is the plant on the way down. So Yud is the divinity. Hey in this is the crown of creation, which is the godly soul, as it expresses divinity, expresses itself in the soul of a human or of a Jew. And the Hey is the animal kingdom, the Vav is the plant kingdom, and the Daimim is the dirt, Mother Earth. And of course, Mother Earth is no accident that Mother Earth is going to be the place where seeds need to be placed in order to grow. So there's a power in the earth. We're ahead of the story. There's a power in the earth. Right? We know there's a power in the earth.
Right.
That's the lower Hay. So, the Naisifal is in addition to this, Nefesh Echai Ruchni. So in addition to it, so as we're going up the chain, the plant has a certain power that's of animus that's indicated by the fact that it can grow. The animal has a higher level of spirituality indicated by the fact that it can move. Yes? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Medaber, and now the speaking person thing, Naisif Oed Al Kulam adds something over all of them, which is the Nefesh HaSichlis, the mind, the quality of mind, which is expressed in the Nefesh HaMedaberes, this quality of speech, the Hulu. So the Nefesh HaSichlis, the mind, the mind is composed of three elements, Chachma, Bina, Das, and the top level of mind looks up, that's the Yud of the Shem Havaya, looks up with a point on top, called the Koitzel Yud, into the eye. It's connected with divinity. So you have three levels here. You have divinity, spirituality, and materiality. The earth appears to be simple materiality, right? The plant has a spiritual quality. It grows. The animal has a closer to God's spiritual quality. It moves, and it feels, and it expresses how it feels. I mean, people who are into plants know that plants also, in a certain crude way, express how they feel as well.
Yeah.
But animals certainly do express how they feel, right? Any of you who have pets know that you know what's going on with your pet. But the highest level of expressiveness, which transcends Ruchnius, is divinity. And divinity is lodged in the Nefesh Elokis, which communicates down in a person to the lower levels through what's called Nefesh HaSichlis, that aspect of the mind which connects up above and brings down below.
That's why man walks erect also, right?
Pardon me?
That's why also man walks erect.
That's
Mom
also
says it,
why
yeah.
man
My mom
also
taught me about it when I
acts
was a
That's
child.
a good point.
Unfortunately, I messed up other.
Good. Hine derech klal. Any other questions lurking there before we go on? I mean, we seem to have a Good question. Okay. So, V'dera Klal, in general, we're up about 6 lines from the bottom. If you're following, the line begins with a Klaf above apostrophe. Okay, in general, Balachayim hem kululim beis devorim. Animals include 2 of the levels. Haguf shaboy, the body that the animal has. Hu bechinas sameach. Remember, it's not dirt. The animal is built with a power of growth within him. That's not dirt. The animal has 2 parts. It has the power of growth. And how do we see this? We see that the animal is noiled katan v'nasa godel. He grows from youth to old age. The animal, the lion. The hanefesh shaboy hu nefesh shechaya lamina. And the nefesh, the soul that he has, is a particular soul that's designed for his species. And that's how he's created. And how both of them are connected. Shnehem yotzu yachad min ha'oretz. Dahainu haguf im hanefesh shechaya. They come connected. The body with the animal soul, shaboy, al yedei maimer, through the maimer that God said, maimer Hashem. Let the animals, and we quoted at the beginning, let the fish swarm in the sea, let the animals come on the dry land. And mishum shebechinas sameach, because the plant entity or category, v'chai, in the animal category, even though they're both, one is higher than the other, obviously animals higher in the hierarchy than plants, but they're close to each other, right? Like the vav, like the hey and the vav, yud k vav k, yud k vav k. The hey and the vav are right next to each other. The hey is the higher letter animal, the vav is the lower level plant, right? They both have a similar quality in that, number one, they were created as they are, but they have a nearness to each other. From this perspective, if you could say such a thing, an animal is just a moving plant. I'm just saying it's somewhat with tongue-in-cheek, but that's what it is. It's created with that ability, an added ability to move, which just is an incremental add over the plant. So they're near to each other.
Weren't there migrating trees in Brazil or something?
Wait, one second. We have 2 people talking. Let's go to the table first. What's your question?
Wasn't there migrating trees years ago in Brazil or
The
something?
what?
Weren't there migrating plants that used to, years ago, wasn't there something, years ago, strange?
I'm not familiar with migrating
The
plants.
seeds,
I'm
the
familiar
seeds
with
flying.
seeds being migrated by the wind or having structures which allow them, but I'm not
Maybe it was
familiar.
something from childhood, I remember. Sounds strange indeed.
So I can't deal with migrating plants.
It was very strange
No, I
indeed,
just-
Animals have an animal characteristic in a plant that moves. Very strange indeed.
Well, okay, I can't. I mean, the only motion I know in plants is the motion that comes from external forces, not other than growth.
Like Venus flytraps that have the ability
Yeah,
to
but they don't move from
They
place
move
to
from
place.
place to place,
Okay,
I know.
They don't-
Maybe it was a science fiction from childhood. I don't know.
things about plants move clearly, but we're talking moving from
I know
place to
stationary
place.
from place to place.
Okay, there's a question here on the Zoom. What's that? Yeah.
Do you want to play it out loud for everyone to hear?
What?
Play it live.
So the question is, let me see if I got the question. How do we rewrite the fact that they have these 4 levels? But go ahead. But the haze, what? You asked the question about the haze. The haze, but the question wasn't that they're both the same. What are you asking? Okay. So the question out there is, how does, we got these 2 letters hey, and in this time of Shuva, which is Tashuv Hey, we've learned that before, right? Shuva, Tashuv Hey. We're focused on returning the Hey. Now, I'm not sure what that has to do with this, but let me give the
You're
short
saying which hay?
Okay, well, let's give
Isn't
an
that the
answer.
question?
2 Heys, right? So the Hey Kata, the lower Hey, is connected with earthly things. Earthly things. And that's, the earthly things are the preoccupation that we have with earthly things. Physical things. Stuff. and our preoccupation with stuff. Now, stuff in a human gets translated. It isn't just gold and silver, although some people are totally preoccupied with gold and silver. It's called money, right? You can't get more earth, even though we're not on the gold standard anymore. Money represents the value of earthly things. So we are here to bring those earthly things to the service of God. Not to dump them, not to put them aside, but to take them, use them, and be involved in them in a way that attaches them to divinity. And of course, the way to do that is through doing mitzvahs through them. So that's a short answer for the Hey Tato, the lower Hey. Right? So that's just taking the upper Hey is seichel. The upper Hey is the part of real seichel is a quality, a derivative of the nefesh elokis. But we see in animals themselves, they have some kind of mindfulness. They have some kind of way of expressing themselves clearly what they want. A plant has a harder time expressing what it wants. You know, my wife tells me it's time to water the plants. The plant didn't tell me it's time to water the plant. The dog will bark if it's time for something. So that's the deeper or more, let's say, profound levels of the nefesh Bahamas, right? But it also has to get into our mind state, because the nefesh sichlis, the intellectual soul, as we all know, our heads can wander into places that are not particularly great. So we have to restore the more refined parts of not just the grub parts of ourself, which are attached to gold and silver as a metaphor, but also the more refined parts of our soul, where we can raise our aesthetic to divinity. We can take art, and rather than have it just be an expression of art per se, but art in the service of God, music in the service of God, the higher faculties in the service of God. So those are the two Heys. Now, I don't know if that was your question or not. Okay, fine. So we covered it. Well, okay. Now, bottom line on the page. So these are the two Heys. As we said, someone mentioned earlier, they look the same, but they're different levels. So one is the ground level, the gold and the silver, and one is the emotions and the mind and our mind quality. That's why the Hey is connected with Bina, the upper Hey. Okay. V'lochein, since these two things are close together, right? The vegetable has an animus, it grows. The animal shares that animus, it grows, it just adds to it movement from place to place. And so they're very close to each other. V'lochein, therefore, these two things can join together. The ruchnius and the gashmius of these two things can join together, because they're close together and not like the far apart of the divinity and the dirt. So they're close together. So therefore, they were created as one, because there's no big gap between them, between the two levels, the spiritual and the physical. Because the plant kingdom, as they call it in the text in the English books, the plant kingdom is near to the plant of the kingdom of the animals. The aim, I'm turning to page Dalet. The aim b'neihem hefsek oid midager acheres. There's no interrupting level in between. Between the medaber on top and the dirt, the doimim on the bottom, there are two levels in between. Between the plant and the animal, there's only one level.
But then you could say the same thing about animal and man.
No, animal is close to man.
Right,
Animal
I'm
is close to
saying
man.
there's nothing in between animal and man.
There's not, but that's not our point. The point is we're talking about man who is created by the juxtaposition of two very far levels.
Oh, okay, fine. Right.
Sure, an animal is close to man. That's why some
But
people
man
can
was not created from animal.
Yeah, man was not created from animal. Yeah. Okay, so there's no big gap between the two.
Fungus.
Okay, what?
I think science considers fungus something between the two, right?
Fungus is something between diamond and plant. Yeah, I'm not, yeah. But
Good point.
Until next
fungus.
time.
But but again,
Yeah.
it's an interesting, but it's off point because there could be a closeness between a plant and dirt, but the plants were created growing. They weren't created without dirt, without any growth quality.
That begs the question: was the seed created before
Which came first, the seed
the
or the
seed
plant?
or the plant?
We know that. He created plants. The Torah answers the chicken and egg question.
Created the
The
chicken.
chicken before the egg. There's no chicken and egg question. Right.
It's like Adam was created before he was in a womb.
Yeah. He was created before he was in the womb.
Rabbi, you're saying plants are
What? Speak a little louder because the microphone's over here.
Rabbi, you're saying plants are created with animus.
What?
With not animus. The plants are created
With animus.
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 Yes.
With animation.
Animation. And
Plants.
you're saying a man is created directly from the soil, so he's not created without animus.
Without animus. Correct.
So, and you're saying, so,
Man has no animus, stage one.
Yeah.
Plants and animals have animus right from the get-go.
got it. All right.
Okay?
So the creation is with it's like hitting the ground running at the same period of time.
Yeah, they're hitting the ground running.
But I'm just saying, but not literally.
Right,
That's
man
what-
didn't hit the ground running. Man just hit the ground.
Yeah, man. Oh gosh.
Right.
Squash.
And then later he
And he later gets process of development. Okay.
So the plants, so they were close together. So Lachain, therefore, top line on the page. Nishavu balechayim gufam v'nafshim achiyunis babas achas. Their souls and bodies were created as one. Masha enkein hamedaber, the speaking thing, which is us, rochak, there's a big distance, bedilug, a big gap of erech, of quality, mehasamea, from the plant. He couldn't come directly from the plant, nor could he come directly from the animal, because, as I put it in my own words earlier, these were created by a union of spiritual and physical, which has a proximity. Every physical thing has a spiritual thing, a spirit underlying it, a proximity which is different from the non-proximity of divinity, nefesh elokis, nefesh asichus, nefesh elokis, and the body of a human. Much farther apart. Okay. So what? It's nice. Now we come away. We know a lot of stuff we didn't know before. However, but mashigufo hayadaimin dafke. Why was the human's body created specifically from dirt, inanimate stuff? Yes, you do it. It's known. First of all, that Adam hu tachlis habriya, the human is the whole point of creation. He's the crown of creation. When I say he's the crown of creation, I'm back to the beginning of the class where I said that there's an expression from Kabbalah and Chassidus that it oila beretzoinoi livroi. It rose up in God's will to create. And when it rose up in God's will to create, there rose up in his will, that there should be a human. That was the original thought. So it's an expression of first in thought is last in deed, right? You say, Eshes chayla teres baila. You say, first in thought is last in deed. And, well, which is back to what we said at the beginning. That's true of everything. You have a vision of what you want to create, but that's the last thing that happens is that you create it. First you have to imagine its details, draw its blueprint, write the song, perform it, whatever. But that's something you have a vision in your mind of what you want to do.
So you're saying plant and animal life are created instantaneously. One man is created through that process.
And it's created through a distancing process.
And how does that relate to the conceptual a priori? The concept of existence of an idea a priori to creation.
I don't know what you mean by a concept.
Well, you're saying that
there's
man
an a
is
priori.
created, Hashem thinks of it, but he doesn't. You're saying it's a process from dirt onwards, where the other things like the plants and the animals.
No, they're not a priori. Also, everything is created in a seder, in an order, right? It's just that his kavana, his intrinsic, most deep intention is on man. Now, to create man, he has to do a bunch of things. And I'm just go through, very simply, without a lot of detail, he has to express from his allness certain things which we'll call tools by which he can create. They're called the spheros, right? And with those spheros, he creates things like light, That's the sphere of Chesed. And he creates the Rakia with Gevurah, right? And all of those create a setting, a stage, and with all the elements that are needed in it for his prized creation, which will be created last, which is man. So man is created last. He's the tachlis of the Bria. He's the whole point. If you want to get to the point, man is the point of the creation. The Bechain. So what? What's it all about? Because man is created from the highest and the lowest together, he's able, and this gets to the point that we heard from the Zoom, he's able to take the lowest, which in Shlomo HaMelech's mashal is the darkness, right? And he's able to elevate it to the highest, because he's built that way. He's built as a juxtaposition of two extreme opposites, and therefore he can rectify the fact that before God created before, at a level deeper in himself than the creation of this world, which we call Olam Hatikun, there was a previous world which broke apart and fell into the lower realms. It fell down into the Daimim, Sameach, and Chai, down into the lower realms.
What?
These great sources of energy fell from the world of Tayu into the lower realms. The power of an animal. All right, we have a big question on the table. So let me just explain this a little bit more. There are three levels of...
Oh, now this makes sense.
All right, good. It makes sense to her. Let's see.
Sorry,
If I just... No, good, not sorry. We'll explain it to the rest of the people. Okay? So there were three levels of creation. Rose up in his mind to create. I just gave you the last one earlier when I said that he created the 10 spheros, blah, blah, blah. Before that, the spheros existed in a different way. They weren't ready for the creation as we know it. The creation as we know it, the creation we live in, is a world in which we can integrate things. We can take things that are separate. We can take separate people and bring them together in relationships. We can take separate elements and make compounds out of these elements, right? We can take male and female, and we create marital unions. So the whole world that we live in, why it's called the world of tikkun, the world of fixing, because it brings together opposites. And man is uniquely equipped to do that because he is a union of two total opposite extremes, the nefesh elokis and the dirt. So now, what caused this separateness in the first place that man is going to be able to bring together, and for which we are created? Because there was a previous world structure to this world that I just described, which is called Olam HaTohu, and it's hinted at in the first verse in creation. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Ve'haaretz hoisu sohu v'bayu. And the earth was in a state of confusion. That state of confusion existed until Avram Avinu on planet Earth. While you had these great kings, each one killing the other, people dying and killing. You had the great wise ones who were not yet really wise about the unity of God, but had magical powers, the great giants, etc. But it was a world in which everybody...
Right?
Huh?
The Noflim.
The Noflim, right.
The
Noflim, the great giants. There's a good word. The Noflim you can read about in Chumash Bereshis. They're the fallen ones. They fell from this place of Tohu. Now this translates, I'll briefly go into a little sociological rant. Separateness is chaos. Integration is order.
Interesting. So
Let me finish my little speech.
That's great.
So what we can learn from this on a sociological level, the extent to which we maintain a culture of separateness, which is pretty predominant today, people arguing about, the differences between people, rather than focusing on how to bring people together, So we have returned, or not returned, we have an environment that's rather chaotic, hugely chaotic at the moment. If you look at the political scene, which I'm not going to get into, but this is hugely chaotic. And you have this against that, and that against that, and this one trying to bring down that one, and that one trying to bring down that one. And that's called the world of tohu, the world of disorder, right? Our purpose on earth, which we were created for, and which hopefully we've seen how unique we are in the fallen capability, is to bring opposites together. God created us this way. He made a union of two complete opposites, divinity and dirt, and in two phases, right? So lurking in here is the notion, we're on the third line, what happened in the order of emergence of creation from God's mind. The first level was a level which there was characterized by separateness. Each sphere was on its own, and as a result of that, but it was very powerful. And these powerful lights, powerful energies, came down and got lodged in the daimon, sameach, and chai, the inanimate. Uranium, huge atomic energy, that's dirt, right? The plant life, the ability of the plant to grow, to push through the ground, there's a power in the plant. It reminds me, there's an Irish poet, Dylan Thomas, he said, the force that through the green fuse drives the plant, drives my green energy, drives my green youth. There's a force in the plant. I mean, you ever seen how a plant can break through a rock? You ever seen it? You take a walk in the woods and see how a plant can split, how the roots of a tree can crumple stones. Huge amount of power in the plant. Huge amount of power in the dirt, huge amount of power in the plant, and huge amount of power in the animal. You harness an animal, and you can ride forever. You can grind it, if you harness it to a millstone and grind the wheat. And as the Gemara itself says, Roiv tevuah mekoyach shor. You get a lot of produce from the power of the animal. So there's a huge amount of power in these lower forms, and man is uniquely equipped with the ability to take these fallen, powerful forces and raise them up. And that's what it says in the second line. That man is able, lies maila hanetzutzis, he can raise up the sparks, shenaflu, that fell into the inanimate. Again, atomic energy is a good example of that. In the plant, the roots of a tree, splitting a rock. The chai, the power of the stallion, the ox, and the lion. He can harness this because he is the union of these two extremes. Through his that he uses them, with sorkov, he uses them, he harnesses them. How does he do that? He takes the plant, makes bread, and on the bread he makes hamoitzi, because it's a mitzvah. God said, use this in a certain way, and it will bring the world together. These are the mitzvahs. He takes an animal, and he does to an animal what the Torah wants to do to an animal, so that he either utilizes it for a harvest, or he shechs it in a way that makes it kosher, and this restores the sparks from their fallenness and separateness to their inclusiveness in divinity, because the Torah includes them through the structure, what we call mitzvahs. So the man can elevate the sparks. That's his unique ability. And he can take the grain and he make bread out of it in order to eat. He could take the plant life and make a beged, a garment, to get married in, make kedushin in, to go dress up for Shabbos, the way a person beautifies the Shabbos. He can make a garment. And in addition to that, his quality of mind is that his mind is capable of answering your son's question at the beginning of the class. How do I know it's true? He's able to discover the truth in Torah and serve Hashem with full-mindedness. So just imagine what the world would be like if we all realized how we're created, why we're created this way, and what our capability and therefore responsibility is to do.
Without all the drama?
Huh?
Without all the
Without all the drama.
we would get bored.
We would get
No, I'm
bored.
just kidding.
Without all the
It
drama.
goes to politics.
Huh?
Well, it's a politics.
Well, they're a marshal, but it just hints a little bit at how we have the capability within us, if we would only realize it, to make synthesis. instead of, what's the opposite of synthesis?
Antithesis.
Huh?
Synthesis.
Antithesis.
Antithesis.
And antithesis,
Right.
correct.
Well, there Marshall, okay, by way of example.
Antithesis.
How are we doing for time?
Antithesis, yeah. It depends how you define it. If you say synthesis, synthesis, or
Yeah,
antithesis.
synthesis and
The
antithesis.
antithesis is
I
the
got it,
exact
I got it,
opposite.
I got it.
Interesting.
But anti-synthesis is the separation.
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 Well, Derek Marshall, fourth line down.
Hegelian concepts originally.
Please, let's talk about
Oh,
Hegel.
Derek Marshall. Let's go further. What?
Let's move it into philosophy. Also Kant.
I think it came originally from the Hegelian concept of synthesis and antithesis. If memory serves, many moons ago.
I wish I could.
Tell her I say hi and I miss her.
All right, I'm gonna take this one by one. Zena. She said very interestingly, challah is a very good example of all of this.
Hmm?
Okay, challah, help me out. We take the wheat, which is the plant, and what's next? The yeast, which is coming from an animal.
Okay.
Yeah, and how about the water? How about the water, which is coming from the ground, right? And what? Oh, we take the, and then you dip it in. So the water's not the ground. You take the plant, the wheat. You take the yeast, the animal, right? And you put it together with water, of course. That's what keeps it together. And when you eat it, you dip it in salt, which is the dirt. Pretty
Why?
good.
Why is that? What's the meaning? I'm missing something.
What this person is saying is that the mitzvah of eating, of baking and eating challah models these three levels. The human being at the top of the heap is
Just
taking
consuming that.
yeast, the next level down, from an animal, and the grain from the plant.
No, the yeast is not from that yeast. Oh, that's right, you're right.
Yeah, yeast from the animal, and the grain from the plant.
Beautiful.
Put it together, make the bread, and to perform the mitzvah correctly,
Salt of the earth.
you dip it in the salt of the earth.
Oh, very good.
Very nice. Okay, Valderek Marshall, fourth line down. So by way of an example, now this example about how it is that these two high level and low level get together. We have mushal, a metaphor for this that we're about to put on the table. Although I like your mushal of the challah very nicely, but he gives a different mushal. He's just describing not all four levels, but the two levels, the top and the bottom. When you want to lift up something from the ground, like a heavy stone or a foundational wall, with a vessel that lifts things up, which is nikra lever. I guess that must be Yiddish because it says lever, liva. You use a lever. Now, when you use a lever, where do you put the lever?
Underneath something.
At the bottom. You have to put the lever at the bottom. Shaboy dafka, and that's specifically where you put it. Maybe I bought kaisle, gives for examples. If you want to lift up the wall of a house, of a bias, you have to lift up from the bottom, specifically. What happens when you lift up from the bottom? The top goes higher. So here is, we're taking a little liberty, but here is the idea of the light, the advantage of light that comes from darkness. When you take the dark, the dirt, the low, which we're built from that, and you apply the divinity of the Nefesh Elokis to it, so you raise up, if you can say such a thing, and the Chassidus does, you raise up godliness to a higher level. You're raising up the roof. So that's the mushal. When you take the lever and put it at the bottom, it raises the top even higher than it was in the first place. The advantage of light that comes from darkness. On the other hand, if you tried to start to do this by lifting in the middle of the wall, then the bottom would have been left behind. Right? It's still on the ground. So the whole cosmos, and deeper than the cosmos, gets elevated by us because we're built this way, as a unity of the highest of the high and the lowest of the low. Similarly, as he says now, Neshamas Adam, the souls of a human, Nislab Shebeguf, are enclosed in a body, which is from the daimim, from the inanimate, Hayaser Tachtin, which is the lowest level, Mikulam, of all the levels, V'yala Isay, and lifts it up, Umamela Yala Gam Hatzamer, and so, in doing so, it lifts up all the other levels in between, right? If you're lifting up a building, the first floor, second floor, they're all the levels get in between. So the man who's rooted in the dirt, the human, lifts up all the levels, which are, what are the levels above it? The plant and the animal, which are higher. And that's why he's called, this is interesting, why the human is called the speaking entity. From another word, another meaning of the word, and a different pronunciation of the same letters, medaber, is yadber. Yadber without the name. Yadber means to rule. It's a pasuk in Tillim. Yadber amin, that he, God, rules the people. So, I mean, it's a clear kind of thing to do. I mean, just a melech, a king, when he rules, does it with speech. Does it with expressing in herself. It's a queen with speech, with edicts, etc. And with that, there's a uniformity and a conformity that's brought to the society. So it's the lesson yadber. Yadber amin. Yadber in speech is connected, is the same word. Medaber yadber. Claimer, which means to say, Shehu, the human, is amaning es kulam v'yosem ma'ila oisim. He raises things higher than where they were before, al yedei avodasim, through his service to God. And this is the service specifically of an Adam. Now here you could fetch, Adam sometimes means human and sometimes means Jew. And here we're speaking particularly about the Jew, even though the humanity has this capability also through the Sheva Mitzvahs that are also part of the Torah. But he's speaking here particularly about the ability of a Jew, which is the 613 services. And why can he do this? Because he's a medaber. He has the capability of yadber, of harnessing and bringing everything together. And he's the top of everything from that perspective. And he's mislabish at the same time that he's in the top of everything, he's enclosed in the inanimate. And that's not the as recapitulating here, that's not the case with the Sameach, the vegetation. The plant is 2 steps removed from the speaking person. But and the plant is just connected closely with the animal. And here's where he says explicitly that we were connecting it with the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud is the Nefesh Elokis, the power of the human soul, the godly soul, and the Vav, the next letter, is the animal, and then the Hey is the vegetative, and then Yud Kei. Yud is the man. Hey, the first Hey is the animal, then the vegetable, the Vav, and then the earth. The Shem Havayim. And they're all close one to another. The level which is called the speaking person, who is the Yud. And in addition to the Yud, and we'll end here just when we finish this thought, the Yud, you have to know something about the Yud. Not only is the Yud a dot, but it has a koitzel shel Yud. It has a hook on above. And we spoke this out earlier. The koitzel, the nefesh, the mind of the nefesh elokis, the mind quality of the nefesh elokis, as opposed to the mind quality of the nefesh bahamis, has a connection upward into the ayin, into God Himself, and therefore man reaches way up into divinity, brings it down into the lowest parts of creation, the darkest of the dark, and with that, we human beings are able to create an integration and an effulgence of light that's deeper than the effulgence of light that's expressed in the creation before there's any avoda, any service of a human. So that's where we'll stop.
Wow.
I
forgot that point.
Wait a minute. Well, go ahead. You forgot what? No, go ahead.
I forgot. I think I learned this a long time ago, but I forgot that point. That after when Taihu, when the whole previous world broke and it fell down into this world, it fell into
It fell into
the
those
Daimim,
three
Sameach,
lower
and
levels,
and right, and I did not know. I forgot about that.
Okay, so now you remember.
But now, when all that, then now it's just everything comes full circle. It just makes sense again.
Right.
It's just, you know.
It comes full circle. That's another expression of what happens with a man. Neustige lesson b'soifen. The beginning is wedged in the end. Sometimes you don't get the beginning until you're near the end.
That's interesting. Then why was Esav, random question, but why was Esav considered from Olam Toihu?
Because he was wild. The question is, why was Esav considered from Olam HaTorah? Because he was wild. He's unfettered. He's more like a beast.
More like a beast.
Yeah. When he does Shuvah, big things happen.
When you just do what?
Big things happen.
Oh, because he
When
was
you
on a higher
harness
level.
the animal, yeah, you get
Sure.
tremendous power that he is, but all harnessed to divinity.
Mm.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
I hope you all
was nice.
good, right? Be well. Take care till we meet again. What, after Yom Kippur? So, Gemach Sim Taiva, everything should be beautifully come to conclusion, and more importantly, come to expression. That we should see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Gemach Sim Taiva.